Station 51, engine 27, engine 32, truck 105.
You're listening to The Fire Break with Steve Wolf.
Welcome back to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you must know by now, The Fire Break is brought to you by Team Wildfire, developing some innovative technology for wildfire control, like this beast behind me. We're here at the warehouse in Boulder, Colorado. This thing is like a day away from firing up, so I'm pretty jazzed. But I'm equally jazzed, maybe even more so, that we have Dr. Johnny Torgeson with us live from the MCLB base in Barstow, California. And do you go by Dr. Johnny or Johnny or
Johnny? Yeah.
Johnny. Johnny has been actively combating fire for the last 25 years. So what a lot of experience. Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And doing excellent, actually. It's a good day. It's a beautiful day in Southern California. It's about 74 degrees out right now, and thoroughly enjoying it and looking forward to our conversation.
You bet. So when you were a little kid, did you know you were going to go into the fire service, or at what point did you figure that out?
No, absolutely not. In fact, I wanted to be a paleontologist. Not that I knew what that was at the time, but wanted to, research dinosaurs and all that stuff. I was just like in love with dinosaurs. And what I found out was I didn't have the discipline in school as a young boy to concentrate on my studies and stuff like that. And so I gave up that dream real quick. Not that I should have, but it takes quite a bit of academic rigor to head down that path. And I just wasn't mature enough for it. And so I directed course.
And how old were you at that time?
I probably gave up on that dream junior high when I was like a C&D student.
Okay. Yeah. Like, a lot of people, if they're not in the career they're in, particularly in the sciences, right? If you're not a self-proclaimed scientist by 8th grade, you're probably not going into the sciences.
Yeah, that makes sense. That was about the time.
Yeah, that's why that early STEM ed is so important now.
It really is. It really is. And I would say I was under a misconception that grades had anything to do with achievement. And it just, as a latchkey kid generation, even, bleeds into today where, a stigma of, how you do in junior high and high school is going to set your path for the rest of your life. And certainly it's a benchmark. It's certainly something that you can use to catapult, but it definitely doesn't put you in the box that I thought it did.
Yeah, no, not at all. I think there's very little correlation between academic success and later career success, because the things they test you on in school or the metrics of success, are unrelated to those of the real world. What do you think are the key attributes of someone who is successful later in life? Personality traits.
Well, there's a couple of things there. You first said that key attributes. And I think really what it comes down to is one, some grace. I think we all make a lot of terrible decisions, especially as young boys and young teenagers. And I was fortunate enough where that stuff didn't catch up with me as it did like some of my other friends and stuff like that. And so I escaped the bad decisions. And so I had some terrible decision making as a young man. And then there's others that made the same choices that I made and just wasn't as fortunate. Didn't have the mercy and grace that
they didn't have as good a lawyer.
What's that?
They didn't have as good a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that plays a role into it. And but making it past that hurdle, it's really just trying to make as much successful decisions as possible when you're younger. I think, that's what sets your foundation, because as you mature, you start making better decisions, and then with that, you start acquiring more self-awareness and understanding, what it takes to be a successful human being, to be a successful man specifically, because there's certainly a difference between being a successful man and a successful woman. Um, and so as far as that is concerned, I think I was very fortunate. But then, I think what really helped me is my dad, when I was younger, he taught me a valuable lesson of laser-like focus, and that is have a plan and have laser-like focus on that, and and achieve it, versus this shotgun pattern. I want to try this, I want to do this, and kind of all over the place. And so with that, I think I was able to channel energy. And then the other thing that I think, as far as specific attributes, there's something that Simon Sinek actually said that I didn't realize I was doing as a young man, that I appreciate now, that I still do today. And that is a perspective, or a mindset, some people might say. And the analogy he used was two runners. And you may have heard this story, but he talks about two runners running through a park. And, they just get done with a marathon or something like that. And they're friends. And when they get to the end of the race, they see a sign, and it says free donuts. And one friend says to the other, like, hey, there's free donuts over there. Let's go get them. Obviously they're starved. They need some energy. And so they're both, all for it in the beginning. But then his friend next to him, he scans the sign backwards, and he sees a long line. And he's like, no, there's a long line right there. And the other friend says, yeah, but there's free donuts. And so the message of that story is, there's some people that are going to see the line, and there's some people that are going to see the free donuts. And I believe I've been the person that sees the free donuts, meaning just so naive in some aspects, and or don't care about whatever obstacles in my way. Doesn't matter to me. I want the free donuts. And there's other people that will use the long line as, I thought they're wrong. It is a long line, but it inhibits them for getting the stuff that is free for them, which is success. Success is truly free, but you have to wait in the long line to get it.
And some people make the line longer than it has to be, right?
Yeah,
Some people
absolutely.
put obstacles in their way. Maybe it's to delay, the potential of failure, or I'm not sure why, but some people will, like, I've seen inventors, and they have a vision of something they want to invent, and they'll say, oh, well, before I can finish inventing this, I need to go to college, and I need to get a degree in mechanical engineering. And then I was like, no, just start inventing, just start doing the thing, because
Yeah.
that's the short line, right? Maybe it'll take you a year, and you'll iterate a few times. That's a lot shorter than 8 years.
Yeah, that's such a fantastic point, Steve. There was a study that they did, and it was they took different demographics, and they gave them all the same supplies, right? So they had like a table full of teachers, and they had a table full of engineers, and they, these teams, right? And they had every demographic you can think of, to include a table full of kindergartners. And what they gave them was uncooked spaghetti noodles, tape, and string.
Okay.
And they gave them 2 minutes, and they for each group, and they all started at the same time. And they said, all right, whoever builds the highest structure wins. Well, what they noticed was, like the engineers, the lawyers, some of these right side cerebral thinking individuals, they spent most of their time planning and trying to come up with the perfect plan. And then when it came down to building the structure, they ran out of time. Or even if they used half the time to plan, they would run into obstacles or failures, or the plan just didn't work out right, and they'd have to adjust. And interestingly enough, ironically, the kindergartners had the tallest tower out of all the groups, and the reason why, what they found out is exactly your point, Steve, and that is they just failed fast and failed often. There's no planning involved, and this is not to say don't plan, because I am a proponent of planning. But if planning gets in the way of taking your first step, then it inhibits you of achieving what you want to do.
Yeah, I know one of the generals talked about that. Right? He said, "Plans are useless, but planning is everything."
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
Exactly.
you should make a plan, but don't expect it to have anything to do with reality, where the rubber meets the road. Or as Mike Tyson famously put it, right? Everybody got a plan until they get hit.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And it's funny. I'm writing a second book right now, Steve, and one of the things I talk about is winning the day. And in order to be successful, even to know if you had a great day or you won the day, it starts out with a plan for the day. Like, hey, here's a loose plan of what I want to get done. A lot of people will, write down to-do lists and stuff like that. I'm one of those people. Even the days I may not write it down because I'm busy in the morning, I have a mental loose plan in my head of like, hey, here's all the things I need to achieve. But what happens is the people that don't do that, they're kind of susceptible to whatever the day brings, and as opposed to have a foundation of like, hey, here's what I want to achieve. So they don't even this sect of people doesn't even know what a win looks like. All they know is like, hey, this hit me today, and you're on defense the entire day, as opposed to just overcome some obstacles so you can get back to what you're trying to achieve. And so I think there's some benefit to that. And then at the same time, with winning the day, what I would say is, and this is what you talked about, is when you get hit in the mouth. Okay, so even when you make a plan, because, all right, if you say, let's just say it's 50-50. 50 people don't make a plan, you're already starting the day on defense, right? But then those that do make a plan, they're going to get hit in the mouth, right, Steve? Like we all get hit in the mouth, like
First
especially in
contact.
the fire service.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's inevitable, right? But what you do, and this is where even the 50% that make a plan fall off. And this is what I notice is the plan falls apart and they give up on the day. And you'll typically hear this. You'll typically hear people say, well, I just can't wait for tomorrow, or I can't wait for the weekend. You say that enough each day, each week, and all of a sudden it's, I can't wait for next year. I can't wait for the vacation. And you're living for years and days from now. And guess what happens after that? The same stuff. And so you wind up kind of losing in life just by losing the day. And so a way to counteract that is when you get punched in the mouth is to reset your day. Just like a boxer resets themselves. Like you used Mike Tyson as an example. And so what I do is when I'm getting punched in the mouth, especially early in the morning, I'll look for small wins. Just something that's not even part of my plan. I'll recognize what's happening. I'm like, oh my goodness, this day is falling apart. Nothing is going right. I'll ignore those problems. And it's like, okay, what is a quick win? How can I gain control of my day again? And then I start stacking those wins, Steve. And then all of a sudden, some of those problems, they go away on their own. Literally, that's how it happens. And then other things, I have clarity of thought. There's less emotion. Time has passed. Maybe the problem softens, but nonetheless, by the end of the day, because I've built momentum, I've either solved all those problems or built momentum going in just in another direction. And so I lose very little days that way. So I think that's the other part of planning, Steve, is being able to be agile.
Agile is right. Persistent and adaptive, positive. Stephen Covey went there a lot, right? Begin with the end in mind.
Yep.
Be proactive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's interesting. Even like Ryan Holiday in his book, right, the obstacle is the way, really points out that these are not new ideas, right? There's Plato and Aristotle, grappled with these very same things, thousands of years ago, and we can attribute some of this back to them, but that's because they wrote about it. But I'm sure that people knew about this, 10, 20,000 years ago.
Absolutely. There's nothing I'm saying that's groundbreaking. The Bible says that there's nothing new under the sun. Like it's all been, it's been there. It's in existence. People have already thought about it. We're in many ways reinventing the wheel.
Yeah. So let's go there, since faith is an important part of what you've written about and your core belief system. I've sometimes felt like that's almost a substitute for a plan. That a plan is really something that you decide, not necessarily something that is best for you, because we sometimes don't act in our best interest. And so sometimes my plan is as simple as I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to ask, what is it that you want me to do today? What do you want me to work on? If it's the same thing you had me working on yesterday, that's fine. If it's something completely new, that's fine too. I'm just showing up, ready to work. How does that, resonate for you as, as the balance between listening and planning? Because sometimes planning is bull in a china shop.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that what I've noticed is, really we're talking about faith here, and what I've noticed is there's kind of like two groups of people on how they attack, or what the Bible would say, work out your faith, when it comes to planning life versus being in like the will of God, right? And one way is, and it's well documented in the Bible, and that is, praying and listening and waiting on, being patient on what the will of God is for your life, and following that path, right? Of whatever He puts on your heart, and He confirms that will, and then you do it, right? And then and that's truly living by faith, right? Because like you're listening to the Holy Spirit, and it doesn't matter what your plan is, that is the way you're going, right? And there's a lot of beauty in that. And however, I've never been that way. I've never been that person. And you would think like, oh, wait a minute, well, then how do you walk by faith? And how I've worked it out is the opposite side. And that is, we talked about this nimble agility part. And that is, if God puts something on my heart, or what I feel He puts on my heart, or if there's just something that I want to do, obviously I pray about it. But what I do is I just start taking action, and I continue to pray about it. And if God's going to bless it, He's going to bless it. And if He's not going to bless it, I'm not going to be upset about it, actually. And so for me, that is how I walk by faith, is as I journey through this life and I plan my next step, I allow God to have all the glory and take it to where it needs to go. And if I run into a roadblock and that's not where I'm supposed to go, then I pivot, I move on, whatever. But I think the reason why I like that plan is because there's a pitfall, and that is like when people run into obstacles, you might hear people say, well, oh, that must be not, it would be easy if that was God's plan, like because He'd be opening doors, stuff like that, or easier, right? Or maybe this is a sign I shouldn't be doing this stuff. And anything that I've tried to achieve in life, there's always obstacles. But I'll tell you what, when God wants you to stop doing something, it's not an obstacle. He'll literally shut the door. Like you ain't going any further. You can think of Jonah and the whale, right? Like he tried to escape going to Assyria. God shut that door by literally putting him in the mouth of the belly of a whale. Like the door's shut. You're not going there. That's not an obstacle. That is,
right.
And so that's what I've recognized in working out the plans in life. Proverbs talks about uh, will we decide our ways, but God guides our steps, is what that proverb says. And so it aligns with that thinking in my view. But once again, I'm not dogmatic on this stuff, Steve. Like it's, the Bible's very specific about it, saying work out your own faith. And I think the key there is that you're walking by faith regardless. God knows your heart, and if you're living by faith through Christ, really, whether you're planning or not, or waiting on God's word, it's still faith.
Yeah. And another thing, people worry about the how, right? They have a sense of like, this is what I need to do, or this is what I feel called to do, but how am I going to do that? And there's this in the way, and there's that in the way. And if I were to think about that in a religious God way, I would say, well, if you got hired to paint a house, the person who hired you is going to give you the paint. They're going to give you the brush. There'll be a ladder there when you need it. Don't worry about it. And the same thing here. If this is what you're supposed to be doing, all of the resources that you need to make it happen will show up.
Oh my gosh, that's such a fantastic point, Steve. On some of the things that I've done in life, I didn't have the resources. And here's one example is at 24, I wanted to open up a health club. My parents owned businesses. Actually, I wanted to open up a sandwich shop, but my realtor at the time that I became friends with, my wife and I became friends with, said, hey, there's no gym in this town. Why don't you open up a gym? And I was like, oh, that'd be awesome. And so what I found out at 24 is you have to be worth something in order to make money. There's no anybody, you got to have capital, right? And so you have to have money to make money.
Well, you have to have enthusiasm, because enthusiasm attracts capital.
100%. And I think that's the flip side of the coin is there's still a way to do it. It's just so much. It's like a needle in the haystack. But to your point, Steve, is that I didn't look at the obstacles. I was naive enough where I didn't even know all the obstacles. It was just like, all right, starting a health club, and these are $250,000 to $500,000 ventures just to get it off the ground. And I was worth zero. I was 24 years old. I was in credit card debt. I just bought a new house, but to your point is, God opened up all of those doors, gave me all the resources I need. And to the point of even when we finally opened the doors, which was a miracle enough, well, I didn't even have any working capital to be open the next month. Mm-hmm. And so I had to be in the red within my first month. And I was. And within 4 years, became one of the top 100 grossing franchisees for this company in the world, and the top in California. But the whole point is that if I would have been, waiting for all the resources, it probably would have never happened. So that's to your point, Steve. And I have many more examples of that. Even getting my doctorate, I was like, man, my wife wasn't behind spending a bunch of money to pursue a doctorate, and so I waited a few years for the financial aspect of it that never came, and it wasn't until I said, you know what, I'm just doing it. And when I decided I was taking a self-leadership class actually, and I was like, I'm done waiting, and so I just took the step, and all of a sudden, just taking the initial steps, I found a way for the doctor to be paid in full. And my education at the doctoral level, I paid $0 for it.
Well, you got more than your money's worth.
That's right.
Yeah. Goethe spoke about this, about the power of decision and commitment. He said that as long as you're waffling about something, nothing's going to happen. But the moment that you commit, in his words, he said, providence moves as well, right? Yeah. people show up, resources show up, everything shows up because the universe responds to your clear intention. And I don't know. I feel like I've been the beneficiary of that, many times. I needed $5 million to build this machine that you see behind me.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't have that. But I was so excited about the idea that we could invent something that would blow out wildfires that, investors showed up and they said, this might be crazy, but it's a huge problem and it's worth taking a shot at. So that's
Absolutely. Really, I see insurance companies jumping all over that.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, you got a $10 million house sitting there that you're about to write a $10 million check for, and someone says, I could save that for $1 million. They just saved $9 million.
Wow.
So that's what we're hoping on this end. Tell me about your interest in leadership. Did that come about through your interaction with the fire service, or was that something that you were interested in separately?
Yeah, it's something that I grew to love that I didn't know I really loved. It's funny. I've been in a leadership position my entire life, of formal ones, whether it's captain of sports teams, NCO, in the military at a young age, a business owner, or a leader in the fire service. There hasn't been a gap in being in a formal leadership position since high school. Wow. And it's not by like searching out this stuff. It just, kind of stumbled across a lot of it, to be honest with you. And I didn't really grow to have a passion for it until after I was getting out of my business and kind of pivoting my passion back to the fire service. I realized that what I really loved about the military, what I really loved about owning a business, and what I really loved about the fire service was leading a team, was developing a team of people and us working together and creating something beautiful as a team. All the other stuff was just outputs of that team, which people I think really focus on a lot. Like, oh, I love, doing rescue. I love, structural firefighting, like the task oriented stuff. And though that stuff is fun, obviously, but for myself, what I really endeared and what I just through life finding out, discovering yourself and what you truly enjoy, I found it to be building teams.
And so what are some of the things that you do when you set out to build a team?
Yeah, so I think really what it comes down to, Steve, is it first and foremost an understanding is, and this is, what I've grown to understand, and even more so after I wrote my book, Forging Your Team, is leadership is all about team building, meaning it is the point of leadership. They talk about like, oh, leadership is to build more leaders. Leadership is to help people. Leadership is to meet the mission. And I found out that it's false. In my opinion, I think it's false. And the reason why is it's not pure, is I can be a good manager and get a lot of that stuff done. I can be a good supervisor and get a lot of that stuff done. I could be a good administrator and get plenty of that stuff done. I don't necessarily have to be a leader in order to achieve these performance outputs, these KPIs. But there's one thing you can't do, specifically can't do without leadership, and that's build a team. It's impossible. And that's because the necessity of team building is relationship. You don't need to have a relationship to be an effective manager. You don't have to have a relationship to be an effective. Now I'm saying effective because there's a difference between effective and good, right? Because even a manager, you want some leadership qualities, right? To be a good manager, but to be an effective manager, to move the needle, I don't need leadership at all, actually. And so, but to actually build a team, it is pure leadership because it's pure relationships. And so that's where I think there's a fallacy in the world right now. There's so much conflation between managing and supervising, administrating and directing and commanding into the world of leadership. That now it's just I think it's the reason why there's so much focus on leadership, Steve, now than there's ever been before. It is like it's almost talked about so much that there's an exhaustion about it. Especially like when people take classes, they go to seminars, they have people come to, the organizations and they teach all these great theories about leadership. And what changes? Nothing. Like there's not a lot of return on investment. And how I know is like the surveys, right? And people leaving organizations and the moral injury and all these things in the fire service, we're having a mental health crisis. We're having a recruitment and retention crisis. We're having a crisis with, apathetic firefighters. You don't have those problems when you're building teams. You don't. I've built them, plenty of them, whether it's in a business, whether it's in the military, whether it's in the fire service. I've built teams in every single one of those situations, and never, ever has there been an apathy problem on my specific teams. Never has there been like, oh, this person wants to go somewhere else. No, in fact, they're like doing everything they can in their power to stay on that team because there's something special about it. And so, and that's leadership, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's my passion. That's the message I'm trying to get out. But it's just, it's like what Mark Twain once said. He said it's easier to fool people than to convince them they've been fooled. And so that's my issue is I have academia that is just regurgitating a lot of the same fallacies, talking about performance outcomes and value systems and stuff like that. And it's not that values aren't important, because obviously values are important because that's how you build relationships, right? But it's not value systems of you trying to give other people your values. So that's when they talk about like mind mapping and brainstorming. Hey, let's all agree on values and let's live out those values. That's leadership. Nah, none of that works. Tried it, been there, done that. And the reason why none of that stuff works, Steve, is because whatever values you're bringing to the table, when you leave that table, you know what you have? Those same exact values. It doesn't matter what conversations we have because you're going to go back to your modus operandi. And so, it's whatever values you bring to the table, like you live out those values and you do the best you can. But trying to teach people values in academia, what are we doing? Like, what a waste. Like it's the same difference. If I were to take a class on ethics and values, or us sit around a table and talk about ethics and values, whatever you were grown up with, whatever environmental factors that you have, all these different variables, wherever you're at with your walk with the Lord, that's what's going to dictate your values. Not a class you're taking, not a conference you go to, not a brainstorming session. And so I think it's an absolute waste of time. No one's going to say that, but I will, because I understand it. I'll be the voice in the darkness or in the wilderness. I don't care. But values is an absolute waste of time. Are they important to have? Yep. Am I changing your values through a class? Nope.
Interesting. Right. And it's really true that, some things you have to learn through life and you can't learn in the classroom. I could study astronomy and then I could tell you how far away each star is. I could study swimming and go out and drown.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I think that's the problem with leadership that I'm running into as well, Steve, is like we treat leadership like a hard skill when it's a soft skill. And that is, so here's an example. Like if we want to teach someone how to throw a ladder, well, typically it's, the military, the Marine Corps uses this mnemonic called EDIP, right? It's explain, demonstrate, imitate, perform. Okay, so you explain the process, right? So you put on a presentation, and then you go out there and you grab the ladder and you demonstrate it for them. And then all they need to do, they don't need to do anything but just try and imitate your demonstration that you did. And then after they've, through repetition and coaching and instructing while they are trying to imitate you, they eventually get it, and then they go on to perform. And so that's the process. The problem with leadership, because it's a soft skill, you go take a PowerPoint. Well, all you got, right, was the explanation. You're on the E part of it. You didn't even get to the demonstrate, right, imitate, and now perform. And so the key in teaching people on how to lead is you have to build systems on how you're going to demonstrate that for them, how they will imitate that in front of you, and then be able to go out and perform so they can fail fast, fail often. And so we have all these people just like, hey, like, I will change your organization. Just let me come do a 6-hour presentation in front of your people, right? Like, are we going to have people throwing ladders with just explanation in the fire service? Are you going to have scientists that are building amazing things like you're building right there by an explanation of physics only? Like, or engineering or whatever, like,
No.
not. And so with that said, that's the conundrum that we run into right now. Is there's just all kinds of how we're going about it, how we look at it. It's all wrong, and then we wonder, like, why do we keep having leadership problems? It's not the next generation. It's not their fault. We are messing it up. Our generations, these generations that are developing the next leaders, have got it all wrong, and not all wrong. I don't mean to be fatalistic, but we're not doing it the right way for the most part. And we're wondering why there's such a problem, why there's such an epidemic in lack of leadership.
Yeah, and it seems like in prior days, leadership was, you could come by it naturally because you learned it from people above you. And I think, as young boys, we're programmed to seek out an older, wiser man who will tell us what to do and show us the ropes. And the generation that did that knew they were supposed to do that and took it seriously as a serious commitment to the future. But when everyone's, when kids now are just being raised by parents who are just on their phone all the time, not giving them attention, not giving them feedback, not showing the value of them as a presence, it's hard to get that leadership. And it sounds like from what you're saying that the cost of not developing good teams is that society won't get the benefit of things that can only be built by good teams.
Exactly.
Right. So you said you could manage, you could administrate, you could supervise, and you can get many things done that way.
Yep.
But there are some things that can only be done by a good team. And what would you consider to be those things?
Yeah, I think those things are the most important things. And it's the humanistic side of things. That is, you can work somewhere and make money, but not have job satisfaction. You can work in a place where you get along people, but don't enjoy the people that you work with. And so it's another level of experience in life. And the reason why is because we are social creatures at the end of the day. The worst thing you can do to a person is not putting them in prison. The worst thing you can do to a person is put them in solitary. So even in prison, there's one other level. And what they're truly doing is they're taking you away from people. And you know what happens when people are in solitary?
They go nuts.
They go nuts. They go absolutely nuts. When you feel alone in this world, you go nuts. When you feel alone at work, work sucks. When you feel alone in your own household, family life is terrible. And so, this family at the end of the day is just a blood relative team. At the end of the day, like that's what it is, like you're as a father, as a husband, what you're really doing is you're building a team in your household and you're the leader of it. As someone that works in any organization, really what you need to be achieving is a group of people around you that we call a team, and what you experience out of that is something magical. It's spiritual. It's it gives you another experience in life that you don't understand until you've experienced it. And it's funny, like some of my teams I've had before, like they're still talked about today, because it's something that you just keep with you the rest of your life, and you're just always trying to get back to that. And so, what I would, to answer your question, what teams bring is all the stuff that you need on the inside.
Mm-hmm. And how that follows, how the service or the product emanates from that.
Exactly.
Right? Because when I hire people, one of my requirements is that they love what they're doing. So I say, look, I've got 10 things that need to be done here. Which are the 2 that you really want to do? Because I've never been successful when I put somebody into a position that they don't like the thing they're doing. And so it sounds like what you're saying with teams is that you give people the internal satisfaction of connection, of praise, of reward, of collaboration, and then the output that you get from people that are happy is a different outcome than you get from people who are just going through this emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic point, Stephen. And what I would add to that is when it comes to organizations, especially for-profit organizations, let's just take Walmart, for example, right? They can't pay people that work for them the amount of value that they actually bring. And the reason why is because if they pay people at their actual value of all of the different things, and I heard this term the other day, and I'll use it now, it's called shadow work, meaning, hey, here's your job description, but there's all this other shadow work that is, caught at the last sentence and all other duties kind of thing, that's the catch-all for the shadow work. And that's where companies actually make money, is they pay you for a certain job, and they make profit off of all of the shadow work. And because if they were to actually pay us, if every organization out there actually paid the value of what each employee brought, they would be in the negative. They wouldn't be making any money. And so the only way, and this is why there's a push in society for like raising minimum wage and stuff like that, because they realize, right, like, oh, they need to be paid more. But obviously that's not the answer, because the more money you make, it still is not bringing those intrinsic values. It's still not bringing the job satisfaction. None of that stuff is there. How organizations can develop a group of people to where they're doing the shadow work and getting paid, where the organization can still survive by not paying people everything they're worth, is by teams, because that fills the gap. It's like, I may only be getting, $45 an hour. I should be getting 65, but I love working with Tommy and Susan. I love the thing that I'm doing. I love the environment I'm in. There's no place I'd rather be. And you just wind up getting doing all this extra stuff. And you're happy to do it. You're happy to do it. And so, you want to know why fire departments and organizations, Walmart and all these places are struggling to keep people to have a competitive advantage, they haven't unlocked the value of teams through leadership, through relationship.
So if leadership is a soft skill and people come by most of their soft skills as a function of their upbringing, rather than education, as you said, it's not something you can learn in a seminar, then how we raise people sets them up to be good leaders or not.
Yeah,
And
I
so,
mean, I don't think it's there's plenty of examples of people that have had terrible childhoods and have used that as a catapult to be amazing leaders. There's plenty of people that have had toxic leadership, and they're like, I'm not doing that, and they do the opposite, and they're great leaders, right? And so, I think it plays a part in it, but I don't think it's all inclusive. Really, what it comes down to is you need both. You need an example of, hey, this is what it does look like. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel and hurt a lot of people along the way because, you're failing. And the problem when you're failing in leadership is you're failing people and you're hurting relationships. And I've done that plenty in my life, plenty. That's why, I know as much as I do because I failed so much in relationships and leading and helping and not doing the right thing, thinking you're doing the right thing, but really not, right, in the moment. And so, yeah, I think it's a lifelong journey. It's an indefinite process that you're never really going to get there. Even today, I fail at leadership like just often. Even with the teams that I've built throughout these years, there was way more failures in those times than there was success. And I think that's really what it comes down to is no matter what your upbringing is, no matter what the education level is as long as when you're failing, you're reflecting on those things,
yeah,
and spending some time on that to not to do it different next time, then you grow as a leader. I mean, that's truly how you're going to do it. I forget. Well, I'll say this: there's this. I'm coming up with I'm theorizing a mathematical equation for wisdom,
okay,
and that is John Dewey and who was the other person? I forget. They came up with their own version of what wisdom was. And really, without knowing it, I accidentally combined both of these people and developed my own. And that is knowledge, right, which is the classes, experience, which is what we're talking about here, but reflection is what is truly needed. So it's knowledge times experience times reflection. So however much knowledge you have matters, right? And if I'm starting out with this level of knowledge versus this level of knowledge, obviously when I get to the end of it, if I times that by the amount of experience, the amount of times I'm trying and failing and doing all that stuff, right? And then I times that by the amount of times I'm looking back on these events and I'm reflecting on, hey, what was right about what I learned on that knowledge, or hey, how well did I apply that knowledge and this experience and what actually worked and didn't work? That reflection is such a key part. And so you need knowledge, you need experience, and you need reflection. And then from there, you gain wisdom. And so you apply that to leadership. Yeah, you need to learn leadership principles. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but I'm saying that's not what's going to get us there. Like that's not it. And just experience alone, just trying to go through the paces and not going to school and not taking classes, not learning from mentors, not having coaches, that's going to set you back too in your progression. And then if you're even doing that stuff and just kind of thinking you got it all down and not reflecting on those moments on how you can do better next time, you're certainly not going to get there either. So you need all of it.
you really do. And I love that formula.
Yeah.
Knowledge times experience times reflection. And real learning feels good, right? We get that little dopamine hit when we learn something.
Exactly.
And I rarely learn from my successes. And so I kind of look forward to the times when things didn't go the way I thought they would, because that creates a learning opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially like I look at, what you're doing here, this big task that you're doing, being innovative. And one thing I've learned about innovation is um, when you run into obstacles, um, you wind up being more innovative because it becomes a necessity. Like I can't move on unless I, overcome this. And so you have no option but to find another way around this thing. And what winds up happening is more innovation. And you would have never had that other higher level of innovation within the innovation
Yeah,
if you didn't run into that obstacle.
and it's fun too.
Absolutely.
When I look at things I've done, I've often felt like I don't know how I don't know how to do anything the right way, but I can get anything done by figuring out the workaround.
That's it right there. That's it, man.
As long as it gets done, yeah, it's maybe not the way a real engineer would do it or something like that,
Right, right.
but it works. Tell me about the role of mentorship in your life. I think that's one of the things that's sorely missing uh, as a valued resource for people coming up. That it used to be if you wanted to get a job as a whatever, you went to work for someone who did that and you learned from them and they taught you. It seems that that is kind of a lost thing, and something that I really encourage young people to do is find someone who is good at the thing you want to learn how to do, that you respect, and will take the time to share it with you. What's that been like for you?
Yeah. I think a couple things. I think one, that's a great question, Steve. I think there's a passive process to that and an active process. We can't neglect the passive aspect of it, and that is people are always watching you. People are always taking note of your actions and what you say, especially if you're successful, because all your haters, they're definitely watching you, right? Like they are watching everything. Um, and so
They could
I think there's a passive
watch you.
mentorship. What's that?
That's right. I said they could be so much more successful if they invested that time on themselves.
100%. That's why they got to watch other people because they're not watching themselves.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so with that said, I think mentoring passively, just by, like we talked about, the characters, the attributes, who you are as a person and what you bring to the table, your demeanor, how you treat people every single day without that formal process, you're mentoring people without even knowing it. Without even knowing it. There's been people that have mentored me and had no idea I was looking up to them and I was watching what they were doing. And so I think there's a passive process to that we need to be mindful of. It's actually what helps me in my worst days where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm done. I'm ready to give up. But it's the passive process that keeps me pushing forward because I know there's always someone watching and there's someone that I don't want to stumble. There's someone that's going to be going through a bad day and I could be the reason they're not. And so that's what keeps the foot on the gas is understanding that passive process. And then to your point of the more formal process of mentorship, I take a flip view of that. And that is the best mentors, I think, have been the ones that reach out to you versus the mentee reaching out to the mentor because they know they need it. But when someone takes an interest in you and you don't even ask them for that, it's a whole nother level of mentorship. You don't feel like a burden because they're coming to you. And I think when it comes to mentorship, we need to stop expecting people to come to us. You as a person need to see things in people or see when people are hurting or they have potential or whatever, and you be the mentor. Like you reach down, not even reach down, you reach across and work with them and help them and have this amazing relationship, and it's truly fulfilling. I formally mentor people through a program called ACP. It's American Corporate Partners. I've been doing it for a few years now, and what it is, it's veterans that are transitioning out of the military into the civilian world. And so I help with that transition period by mentoring, whether they're opening up a business, whether they're getting into public safety, you name it, whether they're looking to start a nonprofit, just anything like that. I enjoy that, and it's a volunteer thing that you sign up for, and so it's my way um, of not waiting for someone to come to me, but like, hey, I'm here, I want to help, and then I do that formally through the fire service as well, right? It's I don't wait for people to come to me. What I do is I typically will mentor who I view as the informal leader that is in a team, meaning there's someone that has influence over a group of people and they don't have a formalized position. And so because they have influence over people, now there's impact, and that impact can be negative, right? And so it's paramount as me as the formal leader to partner with that informal leader and mentor them, because they're going to impact a lot of lives, whether negatively or positively. And so if there's anybody you want to certainly mentor in your life, is if you're in a formal position, I would suggest mentoring that person that has the most influence. And a lot of times it's not the most positive person.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Johnny, it's been an absolute pleasure spending this hour with you. I learned so much, and I really thinking about leadership in a whole different way. Leadership, it sounds like, is the unspoken compensation package that makes it worth being on a team.
Absolutely. It really is. Well put.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I hope we'll continue this conversation in another episode. I've been chatting with Dr. Johnny Torgeson. You look for his books. Well, you can look for his book. His second book will be coming out soon. And just thank you so much. Really.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate your time, brother.
Absolutely, my friend. Dr. Johnny Torgeson, right here with us on the Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. Fire Break is sponsored by Team Wildfire. Until I see you next time, go find someone to mentor and take a page out of Dr. Johnny Torgeson's book. Be well.